introduce longtime Maine humorist, deep thinker, wonderful human being, Mr. Tim Sample. Let's give him some applause.
He just walked by me. I didn't even
Thank you very much. I would ask, I'm going to speak briefly for just a few minutes, but I'd like to have folks give me your attention here, and then we'll go back to what we're doing. First of all, I am Tim Sample. I am a Maine native, and I got all my papers up in the car if you want to check them. And I have been doing fundraisers and advocating for democracy and for the Maine Democratic Party for almost 6 decades, five and a half decades.
Yay!
And there's never been a better time, a more opportune time for folks to support democracy. You got to remember, this is not a brand new fight that we're in. When Margaret Chase Smith, Republican senator from Maine, got up, it was in my lifetime when I was a kid, she got up and denounced McCarthyism in that famous Declaration of Conscience speech. That was important because that was putting the principles of democracy above party politics. And that's what we need today. We need to have, you know, I come from Maine, and I'm old. I am elderly. I'm an old, undereducated, overweight, white male. And so that's a very tough demographic group to be in, but I am one of those people. But I've spent a lot of time on the stump with Maine politicians because in order to do the comedy albums that I've done and the television specials that I've done, and I worked for 11 years at CBS News with Charles Kuralt and Charlie Osgood doing the postcards for Maine, the only reason I get hired to do those things is that I know something about Maine people and Maine culture, because I've made it my business to know something about that. And when I've been on the stump for various politicians over the years, one of the things that I constantly remind them is that regular people in the state of Maine are not all that interested in all the minute details of your politics and your culture. What they are interested in, deeply interested in, is do you have jumper cables and will you stop? Okay? Maine is a pragmatic state. And I've got this sign right here. I was born in Fort Fairfield in 1951. And I've got this sign that says Antifa circa 1945. And it's important to remember that my uncle, and I spoke to a woman in Freeport. We had over 3,000 people in Freeport this morning. I spoke to a woman whose dad was wounded at Iwo Jima. Now understand, the people that fought World War II, the Mainers that came and fought World War II, they weren't Blackwater, they weren't professional soldiers, they ran hardware stores, they were teachers, they were librarians, they were people who rose up and fought fascism worldwide, and they won. And so it's important to understand, this isn't the first time this has happened. It won't be the last time. One of my favorite philosophers, Thomas Jefferson, says the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. You have to stay engaged, you have to stay, and don't get bogged down. And you know, I can remember a time when you didn't even know what your neighbor's politics were. You just saw them at the church supper. And I can't tell you, I have done hundreds of fundraisers across the state of Maine. I lived in Washington County in Calais, Maine during the COVID time and during the first Trump presidency. It was a very interesting time to be living in rural Washington County. But I can tell you this, in Washington County, when somebody's kid has leukemia and somebody's barn burns down in a fire, they always have a fundraiser. And they often would ask Tim Sample to come and do the fundraiser. And you know what I noticed at those fundraisers? There'd be people in the parking lot with Trump stickers, Hillary stickers, gay pride stickers, everything in between, and they were all in the same room laughing at the same stories and supporting their neighbors and their friends. And that's the kind of thing that democracy encourages, not splitting apart. And I'm going to tell you a quick story. My next door neighbor, Fred Sprague. Now, Fred was a kind of person that I grew up around. When I moved to Palmyra in 1976, I was 25 years old, and Fred lived next to me, he was probably 60-something, and he made a hard scrambled living, you know, jacking deer and doing whatever he could do to put food on the table. But I was a young guy just trying to start out. It was during the Carter administration, and prime rate was 21%, and it was hard getting by, and nobody had any money, and I lived on a dirt road. I decided it'd be a good time to make a living as an entertainer. I'm not sure that was the right thing to do right then, but it worked out. But here's the thing I want to talk about Claude Sprague. Claude was one of a kind of people that I grew up with. He was born in Seal Harbor. I don't think he'd ever been more than 200 miles from Seal Harbor, Maine, except he fought at the beaches at D-Day. And he went across Europe fighting the Nazis and the fascists in Italy. And then he did his job and he came back and he went back to being a farmer. Those are these guys. And they have a certain kind of moral fiber. And they have a certain set of values that I think are important today. And they've shaped me, and I hope they will continue to shape generations of Maine long after Donald Trump is resident in his gold-plated casket someplace on a golf course someplace. But what we're talking about is somebody. So I'm living next door to Claude Sprague, and it's Christmas time, and I don't have any money, and I'm worried about what I'm going to eat. I'm literally living off of surplus cheese and this and that. And I know that Claude and Mary live right next door, and they put up the canned vegetables. Any of you people canned vegetables? You got more frickin' zucchini down there than you know what to do with. They've just got a whole cellar full of canned vegetables. And they had their hogs slaughtered, and they had all kind of ham. And well, I was embarrassed, because I was a young man, I couldn't provide for my family, and I didn't know, but I didn't want to go ask. And if you're a human being, you've probably been in that position once or twice in your life. But finally, the winter was coming on, it was snowing, and I walked up the road because I didn't want to spend the money for the gas to drive the mile up the road. And I got to Claude's house, and of course you go to a farmhouse in Maine in December when it's snowing out, you're not going to have a quick conversation. Okay, you've got to sit down by the fire, you've got to play cribbage for about a half an hour now, you've got to talk about the Red Sox, you've got to go do all this stuff just before you're really there. And finally, I went through all that, and then I said to Claude, I said, hey, you and Mary...
Hey, can you shut up?
Yeah, I said, you and Mary, I know you've got some stuff put off in the basement. I wonder if we could borrow a little something. He says, borrow. So he went down to the basement, and he got a batch of groceries, and he brought them up. But he had a look on his face, and I thought he was really ticked off at me for asking.
What?
And he got me in the trunk, and we drove down the road, and he dropped me in my door. He still looked scowling, and I brought the groceries indoors, and Claude said to me, he says, come here. Come out here. Just the two of us standing in the yard in the 2-foot snow. He says, don't you ever do that again. And I just about fell through the ground. I thought, oh no. He says, don't you ever set down the road from me and be hungry again. I won't have it. We don't do that around here. That's the Maine that I love. That's the Maine that I'm supporting. That's what democracy brings us. Thanks for asking me to speak. And we're all about there were over 3,000 people in Freeport. I think we got 2,500 or more here. Keep it up.
Tim Sample.
Yeah, I got a hat. I want a picture of her beautiful hat. What was
While we're waiting for Pat to get here, another song. Love is but a song we sing to
Your crown is wonderful.
You can make the mountains ring or make the angels cry. Some of you know the chorus of this. Though the bird is on the wing, you may not know